Welcome back to the Weekly Driver Podcast. My name is James Rea. I'm an automotive columnist for Bay Area News Group and the editor and publisher of theweeklydriver.com. My colleague and friend, as always, is Bruce Aldridge, and today we have a guest, John Lamm, who I think has probably among the most longevity of anybody I've ever spoken to in the automotive industry. He's been a photographer for years and years and years for many of the major automotive magazines. And he also has, the reason we're speaking today, he has a new book out. And welcome to our podcast. John, how are you today?
I'm fine, and what a nice way of calling me old.
Well, Bruce is in his early 60s, and so am I. I don't know how old you are, but tell us the name of your new book, and with your longevity in the industry, why have you decided to do this book at this time?
Well, the book is actually, we've kind of updated an earlier book called Velocity, and mainly because of the way in which the exotic car world is sort of quickly ramping up. It used to be there was Ferrari and Lamborghini and Maserati, and then Pagani got involved, and now, of course, there's a whole wonderful lineup of great cars from McLaren, of course, still with Aston Martin. I was at the Quail Lodge. I was flabbergasted to see that somebody in Italy is actually creating an ATS exotic car. Now, I don't know if you know about ATS. They were around in the early 60s. Phil Hill raced their Grand Prix car, and they had some really cool-looking exotic cars back in the 60s, but they haven't been around since then. They popped up. There's an electric exotic car being made in Croatia. So all of a sudden, they're everywhere, and they're all very cool.
They're all very expensive. What type of buyers are buying these cars that are like $1 million plus?
That's a great question. Obviously, people with a lot of money or are at least able to claim to a dealership they have a lot of money. They tend to be quite young, and they tend to be very enthusiastic. Obviously, otherwise they'd be buying Chevys. I honestly don't know about the demographics because it tends to change so much. You see, we have a wonderful Cars and Coffee here in San Clemente. We get Lamborghinis and we get Countach. That's an old one, but yes. We get Martins. We get Superperformance, the company that makes the wonderful Cobra and GT replicas, are nearby. They bring cars, and so I look at the people who come in. I would say they're all. You don't see anybody with a lot of gray hair. To be honest with you.
I see.
But you see a lot of guys with enthusiasm. They're great people to talk to.
But many of these cars are sold. They're much like, I would say, call it art, right? That are never driven.
Oh, absolutely. There are people who tuck them away. There are people who want to have one example of everything. There's a gentleman in L.A. who has Ferraris, and I understand he rarely drives them, but he loves to look at them. Well, to each their own. Interestingly enough, on top of all that, these days, driving them is quite an experience. McLaren is loaning me a car this weekend to take my grandson to Cars and Coffee. My grandson doesn't know about it. It's going to be very cool when I pull up in this McLaren.
Oh, you bet.
His jaw's going to drop right to the ground. But what's interesting is that these cars are so capable now and so fast, you'd better be a darn good driver on a racetrack to really exercise them. As you probably read, there was an example not long ago of a guy who bought, I believe it was a McLaren, on Friday, took it to Cars and Coffee on Saturday, and destroyed it, leaving Cars and Coffee. So they got to be careful. They're very, very potent.
Yeah, we went to the Quail, since you mentioned that, a couple of years ago, and we saw, for me, it was, I think, the third or fourth time I've been there, and we saw some real Pagani. Is that how you say it? Pagani?
Oh, yeah.
Pagani. And there was a whole selection of those there. And truth be told, I'd never seen one before, and I saw more in one day than a lot of people will ever see. And those are fantastic. And the McLarens, I've seen more. I've seen even the Sacramento area. I've seen a few in recent times, and it does seem to be that there's an influx. Maybe these people are under 30 and they're all Silicon Valley millionaires, and it's a toy collection in a way for them. But I think that you're right, that I see more and more exotic car rental companies too, where people who have money may go to Las Vegas or some other location and rent a Bugatti or a McLaren or whatever it might be for the day. So those kind of car companies seem to be flourishing as well.
You're absolutely right about Silicon Valley. Bill Gates kind of led the way back in, I don't have the time exact for it, but it would have been the early 90s. It was illegal to bring a 959 Porsche into the U.S. And somehow or other, Gates brought one in. You could bring that car, but you could never drive it. And he managed to put together a law, some of it kind of called the Bill Gates law, that began to make these cars drivable on the street. Because they had to meet emissions, yada yada yada. But Gates led the way. Trust me, he was a hero.
I remember that. They used to call them gray market cars. They'd somehow bring them in and then get them through the Department of Transportation, get them so you could drive them.
Yeah, but they didn't drive very well. Only not just because. Okay, to kind of explain, there was no way between electronics at the time and all the various ways you can now make those cars work. It wasn't available then. It's been learned since then. Bruce Canepa not only brings in 959s, but he's got them well over 600 horsepower now, and they're all dead legal. In fact, there's a number of cars that exotic cars, Ferraris from the 80s, etc., that weren't very good cars when they were new because Ferrari had just not figured out how to make them work. It was Acura with the NSX that really opened up that field. I'll explain that in a minute. But and a lot of those cars sort of just sat on the market for years and years and years, and they weren't worth a lot of money. These days, their values are going up because there are now ways to make those cars work between modern electronics, after treatment systems, yada yada yada. They've gotten to be very, very good cars. And so, as I said, their value is going up, and they're nicely drivable these days. The NSX is interesting because a lot of those cars weren't very good, as I said. And when the first NSX came out, all of a sudden we had an exotic car that was fast, it was clean, it had good air conditioning, it had everything. And there's a very famous story about Luca de Montezemolo, who had just taken over Ferrari, saying to a French journalist, "What is so wonderful about the NSX?" Because the Acura, Honda, sold as a Honda in Europe, was just outselling Ferrari, getting road tests, wonders. People loved it. That guy looked at him and said, "Ferrari can make a very nice, fast car, a very pretty car, but you can't make a cigarette lighter." And the point being that they weren't complete cars. They were just, and after that, the 355, which was the first post-NSX Ferrari, was a much better Ferrari than we had before.
What do you think about these Paganis and Koenigsegg and some of these other real low production? Are they fully developed cars, do you think, in your mind?
Oh, absolutely. I've known Horacio Pagani since he first started, which is, in the 90s sometime. A very interesting guy. Came from Argentina, went to work for Lamborghini, then went off and began to build his own car. And Fangio was still alive, the great race driver, and they were very close because they were both from Argentina. He put him in touch with Mercedes. Pagani still uses Mercedes engines. They're very close to Mercedes. He's a neat guy. Those cars are very, very well developed. Same with Koenigsegg. And by the way, he was at the Quail this year.
Oh.
They had quite a collection last year. This year, he was actually there, shaved head and all. Quite an impressive-looking man.
John, changing directions just a little bit here, journalistically, as a journalist, I've been in a lot of press rooms where basically in the cycling world, a photographer will come in and they've taken thousands of images and an editor wants 5 or 6 for daily journalism, or maybe they want 20 for a photo shoot out for a magazine. But in your world, what was the process like of all the images you must have taken through the years for either this book or other books? What is the process like to whittle down, I'm assuming, thousands of images to put, I think you have 240 or 250 in the current book. What is that like?
I probably have, I have 78 file cabinet drawers full of images and a bunch of hard drives. It's a pain in the backside, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yes.
Particularly these days with digital, it's so much easier mechanically and technically. It's still just as difficult to take a good picture as before, but in terms of film speeds, as we used to call them, in terms of the stuff you can do, it is so much easier, and you can be so much more inventive than you could have been. Back then, you'd have to just get in the film process was a pain in the neck. So when you're doing a book like this, it's just great fun. I'll go into, I have a slide room, and I'll go in there and put on some classical music and just open up the drawers and go, okay, where are we going to go next? And my light table's on, and then I scan this up. If it's film. Luckily, I've been shooting digital since about 2000, seriously since about 2003, when we finally had some decent cameras. But before that, I was scanning this morning, trying to put together stuff for the website I work for on a Ferrari Daytona from Daytona back in 1979.
John, you've been photographing cars for a number of years. What are some basic tips that you could give our listeners to take a good photograph of vehicles?
I mean, if they're at a car event, if they don't have the press credentials that you would have, but if you're just the general public, as Bruce said, can you take a decent photo if you're in the grandstands, or what are your ideas in that area?
Well, that's a very good question. I'm also on the committee that runs the Rolex Monterey Motorsports Reunion during the Pebble Beach Week in Monterey. And one of the things we always like to keep in mind is what we call the iPhone factor. And we always preach that to people who are putting up displays. Most people will take pictures of what you really want to do is make sure people go home with memories, and not just memories in their head, but memories in their phone. So you got to allow for the iPhone. Make sure your display is open, make sure it's easy to see, don't have a backlit, yada, yada, yada. If you're taking a serious photograph of a car, as good as iPhones are, and they're very, very good these days, of course, you kind of need a camera, because you need to be long. You need the standard normal lens or the standard normal full-size sensor, as it was a 35 millimeter film, is a 50 millimeter lens. You really need to make a good shot of a car. You need about an 85 millimeter telephoto or longer to really make it work. Even longer. I shoot with a 600. I shoot all the way from about 105 to 600 millimeters to try and make things work. If you're shooting a race, you need press credentials. It's really tough. When I was a kid, you couldn't get press credentials until you're 21. So I used to shoot races, behind the fence at Road America and places like that.
That's great.
Yeah, well, it was, now you can get them and get credentials at 18, so I'm really jealous.
That's right. I'm going to, another journalistic angle here, that's my background, so I have some interest. When you worked for these different publications through the years, was there a difference, I'm assuming there was, of what an editor or editors liked working for one publication or the next? Was there some, for lack of a better word, bias towards certain manufacturers? Or could you give us kind of an update on what those publications were like back in the day?
Well, first of all, if you're a good journalist, there is no bias for or against any manufacturer.
Yes.
That's absolutely set in stone.
Yes.
It's kind of tough when a company has been making crap cars for years. All of a sudden creates a brand new, really good one. They've got to keep it all in perspective. That's the trip. I spent my first 6 years working for Motor Trend magazine, and then I was at Road and Track 37 years. And then I was with Automobile, or Car and Driver for a couple of years, and then Automobile for a couple of years. Now I'm with the Revs Institute in Naples, Florida, which is a wonderful place.
Yes.
If anybody's ever in Naples, Florida, they've got to go to the Revs Institute. You'll see everything from 1896 to brand new stuff. You'll see the very first Ferrari race car in America. You'll see some race training and race cars, and you'll see every important example of every non-turbocharged Porsche race car. Period. So anyway,
wow.
What was asked over the years changed kind of. Originally, it was mostly black and white with a little color.
Yes.
And then as color became more and more important, that got blended in. Road and Track was always a little more conservative when it came to photography. Car and Driver was when it came to cool photography, particularly in the 60s and 70s. Car and Driver was the place to go. Then everybody sort of caught up and changed. Things have evolved dramatically from that standpoint. Now, of course, Angus McKenzie, who's a big league of motor fans, an old friend of mine, and I said, out of curiosity, in this day and age, when you put up images. You put up like 100 images sometimes.
Yes.
He said, yeah, people tend to do them. And I was sort of dumbfounded to hear that. I tend to look at 25 to 30 at the most. But he said, we'll just put them all up. And he said, you'd be surprised how many people will go through the entire collection. So, that's how things are changed dramatically.
Yes.
Also, a lot of the photos that we did from automakers, I hate to put it this way, but they're kind of faked. In other words, they're able to use software to create images that you really couldn't get with a camera.
Yes, I understand that. Yes.
I see
object to that.
they're those ones that make the car that they're in motion, but actually they're not in motion.
No, there's a I forgot the name of the software because I used to use it, but you go in and you set certain points up around the car, which has been sitting still, and then it will actually give you speed lines, and it will actually sort of spin the wheels. So the wheels are actually moving at roughly the same rate as the car should be going. So it's from a technical standpoint, it's fascinating. It's also cheating as far as I'm concerned. But
I agree. I have a couple of acquaintances in my career as a reporter on the newspaper side. I could rattle off a few names of people who eventually were caught and were dismissed for their images and doing things to the images that were not right. And it took a while, but even a couple of guys here in Sacramento were fired for those offenses, and never a good thing. And I can remember years ago in a whole different area when the O.J. Simpson situation was happening, that the photographer for Time got in quite a bit of trouble for putting like a 5 o'clock shadow on the image he took and making him look more sinister. And he got called out. I don't know if he was dismissed for that, but I remember it happened.
The Weekly Driver podcast gets support from AmericanMuscle.com, your late model Mustang and F-150 authority, bringing you the hottest products and top-notch customer service for over a decade. No one makes it easier to modify your ride. Visit AmericanMuscle.com today.
Yeah, there was a big stink at the LA Times about 4 or 5 years ago over an image that they actually sliced two images together. Fair enough, you can't do that.
No.
I do go in. To me, the important thing is that the image recreates what the human eye can see, and film and cameras can't always do that without a little help with software. But to enhance it, I once people talk about photographs being enhanced. If you want to see the guy who was the expert at that, it was Ansel Adams. I saw an exhibit once of one of his famous photographs, and all the steps along the way that he did in the darkroom, what we used to call dodging and burning.
Yes, I remember that.
To create the final image. And the image he took does not look like the image that he presented, and the one he presented was absolutely sensational. So, who's good and bad in this, huh? I mean, who are the heroes and who are the villains?
That's a good point.
That's right.
So we're going to put you on the spot here, John. You've been around for a long time. If you care to share, tell us about the cars you have owned or currently own.
Well, I'm a journalist, so I can't afford to buy a lot of cars.
Thank you for mentioning that. I understand that.
Yeah. I've always blessed Volvo for the PV544 that my wife had when I was in Vietnam that lasted through a Wisconsin winter without even coughing. I've had a couple out in a Volvo turbo wagon, which I loved. But then I had enough kids that minivans got to be a problem. However, in about 1985 or 86, Larry Crane, who worked for Road and Track at the time, had to sell his 1955 Lancia Aurelia B20, and I bought it from him. And I owned it for some 30 years. The B20 is a very interesting car. Most people in America don't know anything about it, but it had the first production V6 engine. Which was all aluminum. It had a crankshaft speed drive shaft, a rear-mounted transmission, a DD-on rear suspension, and the classic Lancia sliding pillar front suspension. The body was just beautiful. They were built by Pininfarina, and they are legendary cars in Europe. And it was 1952, I believe it was. One of them finished second overall in the Milan Emilia behind a Ferrari because of the range that car's handled so beautifully. Now, I loved it. Nobody here knew squat about it. I stayed on the California Emilia Rally once, and that guy said, "What's that?" I said, "That's a Lancia." He said, "I thought that was the meal that the Italians did between breakfast and dinner." I said, "No." I said, But anyway, so I owned it until 4 years ago, and I'd had the engine rebuilt, and I had reached the point where I wasn't getting a chance to use it very much. So Jim Farley, who's like the number 2 guy at Ford, has long been a Lancia fan. We've talked about it. So I sold it to Jim. He's had it since had it restored, and the guys did a wonderful job. It's just beautiful now. I took the funds and bought a 911 Carrera. So I have a 911 Carrera that I love, and
Beautiful.
yeah, drive it on a regular basis. Go to Cars and Coffee with my grandson. I've got 34,000 miles on it, 4 years, and I just, to me, if you were to ask the journalists in our business, without getting into a wacko expensive exotic, and wacko don't mean that unfair, I mean from a price standpoint.
Yes.
You probably find that about 70% of them would get a 911 of some sort, or a Porsche, but either that or a Boxster.
Yeah, they're a good everyday driver that you can get repaired, and they're long lasting, and they hold their value for sure.
And they have automatic transmission, satellite radio, and heated and cooled seats.
Yeah,
It's important as we get older, I think. Yes.
that Lancia now, just people don't know what that is. That's a division of Fiat, right?
Yeah, it was.
So Fiat quality.
Yeah, once Fiat got a hold of them, they went down the hill, sadly. They actually, in the 50s, Mercedes-Benz in 1955 will tell you that the only car they feared in Grand Prix racing was a Lancia D50 Grand Prix car. Unfortunately, Lancia had, at that point, Gianni Lancia, had pretty well run out of money, and he ended up selling the cars to Ferrari, who then went on, and the Lancia Ferrari, that's what Fangio drove to win the World Driving Championship in '56. So they were wonderful cars, but Lancia financially couldn't hold it together, and that's where that went away.
If you had to, somebody was going to give you a car, what would you take amongst your supercars? I think.
Oh, wow.
What brand?
Wow, that's
Or
a tough
car? Well, pick 3 then.
Well-
What are your top 3?
The Ferrari 458, I forgot what the current one is. The next one up. That I drove when I got to drive from Maranello to the Goodwood Tesla with a speed about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was just sensational. So slick, so smooth, so nice. Ferraris are pretty darn special when you get right down to it. I'm not that big a fan of the F12 or some of the others, but it would be one of those mid-engine ones. Because I've known Maurizio Pagani for so long, I might be tempted with one of his guys.
I was thinking you'd say that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, he's a neat guy, an old friend. And number 3. Wow, that is tough. That must, my brand will be an Aston Martin. The current Astons are so cool looking. And
They are.
Such a nice. Yeah, it might be an Aston.
I like to have one as
That's
well. That would be my number 1, I think.
Of course, Porsche makes nice stuff too.
Yes, they do. Hey, John, in another area, through the years, I'm sure you've mentioned a few people you've met and have relationships with. I think most people these days know that there are some celebrities who have great collections. Jerry Seinfeld with his wonderful show that he has with comedians and cars getting coffee, and of course Jay Leno. And I believe you have a relationship with Jay. And what can you share with us about Jay? And I've met him superficially at the Quail a couple of times, sat at the same table and had lunch, and he just seems like a real down-to-earth guy with his denim shirt and his denim jeans, and a regular guy. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, I've been. I started off by photographing for Pop Mechanics. I don't shoot him much anymore, but I shot him for years and years. I shot him so long ago that he actually had some black hair left.
That's great.
So that's quite some time. But he is a genuine car lover, and he does it in such a nice way. I mean, there's nothing, believe it or not, ostentatious about what he does. And when you look at his collection,
Yes.
it's full of cars nobody else knows anything about. He has there's things like Saabs and Volvos in there. He has a Mazda Cosmo. He has a wonderful, one of my favorite cars in his collection is a Studebaker used to distribute Mercedes-Benz in the U.S. And they did a sort of a Studebaker Mercedes prototype, which never went into production. But he's got that. He has and because of who he is, he gets these really wonderful cars. back in the early, would it be early mid '80s, when people were looking at different types of propulsion systems. General Motors actually built a steam-powered Pontiac Grand Prix. Jay has that. He also has a Chrysler turbine car. So he has all the things that you walk in his car and you go, so there's one. I've never seen one of those before.
That's great.
I mean, yeah,
he
has
likes
a wonderful-
mechanical stuff.
And
for
he, and he
sure.
has his motorcycles too. I read a recent story that he has a guest column in Haggerty's magazine, and he did a column about his love of his motorcycles and taking apart the engines. And I'm not a motorcycle guy, but I read that, and I kind of became a motorcycle guy because it was such an interesting story the way he put that together with his love for the engines on motorcycles as well.
I had the good fortune of having an accident with a motorcycle when I was 20, which I love motorcycles, but I don't ride them. But I must say that maybe one of the most enjoyable times I've ever had with an internal combustion machine was a year when Phil Hill, who was a dear friend, and another guy got together, and we went on a vintage motorcycle, and I was on a 1909 Indian 500cc single.
Oh, my
and
gosh.
Oh, gosh, it was fun. I remember that trip so fondly. I laughed the whole time.
Those have a hand shift, don't they?
Well, what you do is you hold the you ride it like a bicycle with the clutch. No, I'm sorry, I'm going to get that wrong. You hold one of the valves open, as I recall.
Oh,
And so
of course you do.
Oh my goodness! Wow. Yeah.
It's been so long, and then once you're pumping along like on a bicycle, you let go of this, and the engine goes put 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 put. It's just hilarious.
That's great stuff. John, in terms of the new book that you said you updated a previous, could you tell us, is it readily available on all the Amazons and other places? And,
yeah.
And when did it come out? And what do you expect? Is it a car book just for people who have great passion, or could someone buy it? Maybe a man who has one rare car and he wants to pass it along to his son or his grandson. What do you think the audience is for this book?
Well, it'd be a great coffee table book because those things. Books of that size, you pick it up and you look at it one night. Maybe you have a glass of wine or a beer, or just sit around and have a latte.
Right.
And you read through one section because it's called Supercar Revolution.
Yes.
And so we cover quite a long period of time. So that's what I think of it as, and I think anyone who in the evening gets home from work and just wants to put his feet up for a little bit and relax, it's a great way to dip into it. Maybe you do a chapter a night, and then by the time you get all done, you've had a perfectly good time. I love it. I love books like that.
Yes.
The book is sectioned by year or how?
To be honest with you, I don't quite remember because we finished the book, 8 or 9 months ago. And as I recall, it's done by generation. And so because we saw so many variations as the years went by, and so I just picked it right up now just to make darn sure I know what I'm doing here. I love that.
Okay.
I love that book. I love that opening shot of the dashboard on McLaren.
Yes.
And by the way, also at Cars and Coffee, there's a picture early on. I got such a kick out of this. A guy came to Cars and Coffee in a 918 Porsche Spyder, and his license plate was not a 917. So we used that.
That's fantastic. What a good sense of humor. I love that. That's great.
Oh yeah. So then it's broken down by. I haven't got my glasses. I can sound stupid, but again, this is something that I've been writing all day long about a Ferrari Daytona that raced in Daytona in 1979. But my brain's in another part of the world.
Yes.
So So it's in 3 basic sections. The first section is the first wave, and that was the days of the Maserati Bora, the Boxer, the Countach, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then we get into the Group B connection. There was a time when they were going to race Group B cars around the world, and the cars they had to ban them because they were so quick. Some people died driving them. But that included the 288 GTO Ferrari, which was the successor of the original GTO, which, by the way, is my favorite car of all time. F40s, Porsche 959s, Diablos, things of that sort, and the Vectors, which were always sort of, status original tongue or pen. The Vector was never done, so to speak, anyway. And then into the modern ones. So that's where we get things like the 918. We get into some of the hybrids, things of that sort. The 488 GTB, they're a wonderful car. One of my favorites of all time. ZR1 Corvette. And by the way, a real revelation as far as I'm concerned. Don't see many on the road, but the Lexus LC500 is a super nice car. If you ever get a chance to see the interior, I'll bet you'll love it.
Okay.
I believe we drove one, right?
Yeah.
You had one for a week. Yeah,
Yes,
it was
yes.
a very nice car. Fast.
Very nice. Yeah. John, that's great. We want to. You're just a fountain of knowledge. We could spend the entire day with you, and maybe sometime if I'm in Southern California, I'd like to buy a cup of coffee and we can drive one of the cars. That'd be fantastic. And I'd like to zap your knowledge. It would be just great to meet you, and maybe we'll meet you at the at Monterey Auto Week in August if you're going to be there again. And that'll be nice. I'll be in touch somehow. So
you got to come to the races.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. We want to thank John Lamm for being our guest today on the Weekly Driver Podcast. He's just a fountain of knowledge. Thank you for your time sharing all of your great stories, and journalistically and as an auto enthusiast, it just comes through in your voice. So thank you very much for being our guest today. We really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for calling me.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Enjoy the day. Cheers.
You bet. You too.
Thank you.
The Weekly Driver Podcast receives support from AmericanTrucks.com, your late model Silverado, Sierra, Ram, and F-150 online aftermarket retailer, bringing you all of the hottest parts from accessories to lift kits, from wheels to tires and winches. AmericanTrucks.com has the knowledge and know-how to make your wildest dreams come to reality.